I really need to learn to stop talking so much. So here it is. It's the second post. This is going to be about fiction and about gen fiction and slash fiction. So for those of you who are bored already, you can feel free to shut it off. To better clarify, it's going to be about Doctor Who and Supernatural. This is a post mostly for Reaper and for Laura. Reaper to help blame her, and Laura to just get it out there and say, okay, fine, it's out there now. But a bit of background. I've been watching Doctor Who since I was 3. Not been in the fandom until here recently, but I've been watching since I was 3. I have been watching Supernatural and been part of the fandom since pilot. I didn't want to be either because I was still so mad over Angel. Cancellation of Angel and Firefly really pissed me off, and it still does. But it just hooked me. So I've been in on the fandom ground floor for Supernatural. Doctor Who, not so much. I'd probably have to be in my 70s or something to be on the ground floor of Doctor Who fandom. But I joined that fandom because Eleven reminded me so much of the Doctors while I was growing up, and I just fell into it. I said I wouldn't, and I did. Thank goodness other fandoms have better prepared me. Stargate SG-1 was my first fandom, rather rough fandom to start out in, and then I was already pretty much prepared for Supernatural. I've learned to stay in the fringes, do my thing, be happy, gather the information I want, adore my characters, adore my actors, and, just let it go beyond that point. So, I do icon, picture, and vid collecting that some of you guys get to enjoy. Other than that, I stay pretty much on the fringes of fandom, which, because I have, a lot of you are out there going, how come you're not more well-known? That's the reason why. Also, there are way better fickers in both fandoms that deserve a hell of a lot more love. And I make sure to get to them if I can. So, and I'm a dark ficker, which naturally puts me on the fringes, even in both fandoms. I mean, even in the Supernatural fandom, which is pretty much created for dark fic. I run a vault, for heaven's sakes, just for dark fiction. And I'm still on the fringes. I'm not really that well known, and I probably never will be. For Supernatural, I started out gen like I always do. Now, this is what's funny. I am a hardcore slasher. I always have been. But 3/4 of my fiction is gen. Always has been. Don't ask me exactly how that works. But I started out as gen for Supernatural and raised a fit on the day when I finally started slashing Dean, and my first ever graphic slash fiction was for Supernatural. Some of you may know it. It's Pain. For Doctor Who fandom, same thing. I mean, I avoided watching the 11th Doctor for like a year. Besides the fact that Sci-Fi didn't pick it up, which I considered a bad omen, there was all this bitching on the net, and you'd think that I would learn not to listen. Well, I started watching him a year and a half ago, got like crammed in the first season a year and a half ago, and fell immediately in love. I mean, he is the new Doctor with all the new Doctor feel and special effects. And he is a classic Doctor at the same time. The first thing I thought of was my Doctor from Classic Who when he first popped out. And I was like, oh my god, yes! I was hooked. And of course, he got me to actually join the fandom and start writing for Doctor Who. Now, I've been writing for Doctor Who in my head since I was about 5, 6, and could even conceive of a story. But I never actually wrote anything down. Not for him, at least. Never have. And I screamed when about 4 months into the fandom, the Doctor, who is my childhood hero and has always been gen for me, I valiantly fought, but STJRA tricked me and said, you can slash anything. And I went, he's my hero, no. And she was like, you can slash anything. And I'm like, no, he's just ultimately unslashable. I mean, okay, maybe Master Doctor, but I certainly wouldn't write it. I mean, Master Doctor's been around, since I was a kid. Even when I was a kid, I was like, okay, yeah, that's slashy. Been always something's been hinted at, but like most things with the Doctor, while I was growing up, things were hinted at. They weren't really laid out for you. This Doctor seems to be slightly different. You know, the new Who, slightly different. They've made it in many ways more adult, even though they've kept it family oriented. But it's, you know, he's always been Jin for me. I mean, there's just none of that. So SDJRA was like, okay, well, how about Rory 11? I'm like, those two don't even get along, okay? I mean, we finally have a male companion in TARDIS, and those two don't even get along. So I basically laid my own trap and fell immediately into it, and now I am a hardcore Rory 11 slasher. I guess you could call them my OTP. And I just threw the biggest wibbly about it when it happened. I mean, that was like a year ago. I'm just, oh no. And SDJRA laughed at me. This was right about the time when Reaper was like, you know, I hear so much about the Doctor. I noticed you weren't really writing for Supernatural anymore. My muse just up and took off on me, and I still was not able to admit at that time that season 6 pretty much had killed it for me. I was clinging on to fandom for dear life. I'm like, no, not another one. This cannot happen again, because once she stops, she stops. I never write for that fandom again. Only one exception, and that was for a charity fiction. And I still have charity fictions to write. A charity fiction where I wrote for Angel, and I hadn't written for Angel for 2 or 3 years. So I was still clinging on for dear life, and she was like, you know what, I've noticed you really don't write anymore in this fandom, but I noticed that you seem to love this guy. Well, I don't get access to a lot of television. I just don't watch a lot of television shows. I tend to stick to the ones that I like. So tell me about him. And I'm like, okay, where do you want me to start? And Reaper was, well, write a fiction with him in it. Better yet, write our kind of fiction with Dean and the Doctor. Now, this is what's so funny. Dean is my fandom bicycle for Supernatural, and 11 by this time had pretty much become my fandom bicycle for Doctor Who. Now, I don't ship River 11. I don't ship River, you know, I don't ship Amy 11, but I'll read it. There's, you know, 2 or 3 very good authors out there, and I'll read it. And I do actually enjoy what I read. Of course, I'm very, very picky about who I read and what I read. But they're not my ships. Rory 11, which has practically no fan base whatsoever, is my ship. So I was like, okay, technically 11's my fandom bicycle, but if I'm going to cross them over, I can't do that. So I told Reaper, I'm like, you know what, I would love to cross over these 2 shows. I think they would be just beautiful together. But I can't see me actually doing a slash, but I'll tell you what, I'll give something a shot. So I came up with book 1 for DW Supernatural. Yeah, DW Supernatural. Still being written. And she was like, oh, I like this, you know, this is a nice tidbit. Are you sure you couldn't write some slash? So I told her, I'm like, okay, well, you know what? Fuck it. Since 11 is my fandom bicycle, I'll just give it a twist. I'll go ahead and say that, you know, the Master, who is a lot like what he is and can regenerate with a new face, regenerates with 11's face, and is jealous of all the time that Dean spends with 11, you know, making cow eyes at him or whatever. And so I said, I'll tell you what, I'll do a Master Dean, and 11 has to do cleanup on the situation and try to repair the friendship afterwards. And she was like, okay. So, of course, I've got outlines for that. It's never been written. Book 2 came about, and it was written on for a little bit. And then I met Laura. Laura, who is a hardcore River 11 shipper. She is a header through and through. Dropped by my ElJay and read Blue Morning, of all things, which is a Rory 11. And she was like, you know, I just noticed that this one didn't have as many comments. And I felt bad, so I went ahead and I read it. And she left a comment for like every section. She and I got to talking. We became fantastic friends. Laura and I are just tight. And she started asking about Supernatural. I was like, it's a really great show. You really need to see it. She was like, oh, really? Well, have you ever seen Being Human? So I started watching Being Human UK. I still haven't seen season 4, so don't spoil me. And during that time, she was asking a lot of questions about Supernatural, but hadn't seen it yet. Well, it's a bit of a giggle because, you know, I've been working on Jen, Dean, and 11 this whole entire time. I've now got 4 books in this series. I've actually started writing book 3, Soul to Squeeze, for Super Who Big Bang. So she has an idea of who Dean is. I send her a couple pictures, and she still isn't watching it. No problem. But she starts asking for Slash on. I'm like, look, this friend of mine, Reaper, several months ago, I wrote this and this because, you know, she asked to see something with Dean and 11 in it. And I told her that I'd write Master Dean because I can't make it mesh. Well, she, you know, until I said, okay, fine. And I wrote this non-con with Being Human, Mitchell Being Human, UK, Hell Dean, Rory and 11, and it was supposed to be just this smutty non-con, but it grew a plot, and I wrote the whole entire plot down and like shoved it in a folder somewhere, because though I was writing it, and occasionally I pull it out to read it, I technically don't do that. That's not, you know... That was just made just be mean to her. And it still occasionally worked. So she would still pop up every now and again and ask, you know. And I've even had people who read Soul to Squeeze go, oh, I love the relationship that Dean and 11 have. And is this leading to Slash? No. But I'm glad you get the vibe they click so well. So, yeah. Laura started hammering on me again about a month ago. And so I'd throw little snippets, you know what I can write. I'd throw little snippets that I really didn't even put that much thought into, just to be mean. Watch her go, I don't Slash them. Oh! Yeah, those are pretty much the reactions I got. I'd be like, ha ha ha, I don't Slash them. Enjoy. So she started watching Supernatural about 2 weeks ago. She still has not seen the ending for season 2. She's like 3/4 way through it. Don't tell her anything. And she, you know, this whole entire time I still like send snippets and not even buy into it. So Thursday she and I were chatting, and she reminded me of some of those snippets. And I was like, okay, yeah, I just don't do it. I mean, yeah, I mean, I slash them in their fandoms. I have no problem with that. I don't know why it isn't clicking for this one. Well, during chatting, I was being mean, and while I was being mean, and while I was writing snippets, I came with a wild one that just would never freaking work. And I threw it out there, and somehow I came up with a verse. See, I was just being mean with porny shit. I mean, it was just supposed to be like, you know, porn that I wasn't even paying any attention to, because I'm never going to write it. I came with this whole plot line. Once again, plot interfered. Now I can see it. So Reaper, it starts out being your fault because you mentioned it. Because you wanted me to cross the 2 fandoms over to begin with. It's your fault. Laura's been hammering at me forever, and if it wasn't for STJRA, I never would have slashed 11 to begin with. So this really would have been a foreign concept. I was just going to stick with Master Dean. But no, Laura pushed me in this whole non-con thing, which grew a plot, and I put away so I could be in denial. But I actually had to admit, I now have a verse. And it's not even completely smutty verse. It's a verse with actual plot. So, Laura, you got exactly what you wanted. I've admitted it. You are officially no longer my good girl. And Reaper, I swear to God, if I write this mess, you better read it. 3rd post coming up. Be sure to cover your ears. I sing.